What's up, YouTube fam? So this is a very important video, and this is about the use of lathes. This is not for knife makers. It's a very underused tool, and nobody really is aware that you can actually use a lathe to do the vast majority of your handle work. Here's an example, right, of just a basic concentric shape. Now this was actually lathed down from start to finish from an extremely rough, basically a branch. This is actually stabilized wood, but it was very rough piece of wood, and I managed to, I could shape it all the way down on a lathe, and then with sandpaper go over the entire profile up to over 1,000 grit. It was 1,200 grit. And why is that important? Well, knife makers, we use a lot of abrasives and stuff like that, and saws to remove excess material from our handle material just to get started. And there's a lot of elbow grease involved with doing that. There's a lot of hand sanding. The hand sanding can be a bit too much for some people, especially if you do a lot of forging. Your elbow might not have as much grease as it did when you first started off many years ago. And when this is spinning on a lathe super fast, you're machining it away with files, with the tool on the metal lathe. You can get any shape you want, and right when it's about finished, you can sand it all the way to its finished sanding product. Now, round handles are not necessarily super appealing, but you can actually do the rough bulk of your work, right? Here, I turned down 2 laminated pieces of oak, and I actually also lathed. I drilled 2 holes and I lathed these separate pins in there to add strength to this laminated wood. The front here, this is a concentric. This is an oval shape, so I poured down, I machined down from the front first a little bit, and then with a file, I go on the top and the bottom just to get that ring to fit on there. But you don't have to do that, right? So that's what this video is about. Now, if we look at something like this handle was put on a lathe, and I just did the front to fit that ring over the wood, as you can see. So this is a companion series machete style Bowie, and you get, you know, a huge amount of extra strength from doing this kind of ring construction, and feels good in the hand. But this handle is not finished on the lathe. For example, this one. Now this is another kind of style Bowie I made for fun. I haven't actually put it up for sale. It's just it's even got peened in front guard. But if you look very closely, that's what's important here, is that this handle is completely done on the lathe. So I turned the whole thing down, the handle, the whole way down on the lathe. And then when I was finished, I went over the belt sander and flattened both sides here so that it's actually oval. And you can see that because of the lathe, I was able to put a ring at the back, a ring at the front, all perfectly fitting. And of course, I peened it and put a cap on the end there. So this was 0 elbow grease. I didn't have to hand sand anything, pretty much. This was all on the lathe from start to finish, from a raw block of material down to having multiple perfectly fitting, strengthening aspects to these rings. Yeah, it feels extremely nice in the hand. Now, if this had a sharpened clip point, the nice thing with having a handle like that is it's monodirectional. You can use it both sides, right? And having the ring at the front, it makes it easier to flip the blade if you want to. And I just added that ring there for fun. And so, you know, it actually looks super nice on the finished knife. And overall, this knife was actually very quick to make because the handle itself really didn't take that long, maybe 30, 40, 50 minutes max to get everything on there to its final form. And this is why I think it's very important that we look into lathes being used more. So here is a classic use of a lathe on a stiletto style knife. Now, this is actually, hold on. See, all of this was done on a lathe. This whole knife, every aspect of it is done on a lathe. The pommel, so this is what actually attached to the lathe, and the hole in the middle. So that's one thing. You can bore a perfectly clean hole through your material on a lathe. And it's a very powerful way to drill holes. It's very, very centered. We got a little washer here. We got our handle here. Now, you see here, this is what I mean. This is all done on a lathe. All of it. Very strong construction, very strong handle. And then the blade as well. All of this was done on a lathe. And these are generally how these kind of stiletto blades are actually made. And the blade itself was even done on the lathe. I used an angle grinder. So while this was spinning, I had the angle grinder. But what you got to be careful with this is the metal expands. And it's going to want to push into the chuck and into the horn. So, but you see, all these details are done on a lathe. And then I bored a hole and did some threading on there. And that allows you to have these very precise, very pretty looking handle. And it's basically complete takedown. So this one's not finished. It's going to take a while to get there because it's not a priority right now. Another thing, so here's another blade that I did. This is super cool. It's on the website. I haven't done a sheath for it. But again, as you can see here very clearly, it's all done on a lathe. The ring at the back and the ring at the front. And this adds a lot of strength, like I said a million times. And then, of course, I machined down the two sides. And this is an incredible feel in the hand. It just fits right there in the hand. It is extremely comfortable. And again, this knife took only a couple hours to make, actually. I don't remember. I think it was more than 2 hours. But because the grinding on the bevels on a thick old piece of spring steel is actually, I think, took quite a while. But the key thing here to take away is that by using the lathe, and this idea of, with these fitting components and machining it down and hand sanding it down all the way to finished, and then machining both sides, you just get a really, really super duper comfortable handle. And this is nothing new. This has been done for hundreds of years. If you look at old agricultural implements, chisels, whatever, woodworking tools, they've been doing this for centuries, putting a ring at the front, using a lathe to make the handle. What I'm going to do on the next few ones, of course, is leave more metal here and there so that the two sides are actually, there's more flat surface on both sides, just to add more, just to make it, more narrow. You can see here on this particular, this is more of a prototype blade I made for fun. And you can see, right, you can do the dowel construction. I offset it. And so all of those fittings, the copper ring around the dowel, the copper ring on the outside, on the inside of the ring, these are all machined down to fit inside one another. And then I created this sort of, it's a kind of a rough knife, so whatever, but that was done on a lathe. And yeah, it's a round handle, but it actually feels super good in the hand. And this at the back, that protruding element there is very comfortable in the hand. So that's just a really interesting thing that I think y'all would really be interested in looking at. And one of the benefits, of course, like I said, of a handle construction like this. Now, I didn't make this clip point sharp. I would have if it was for me, this knife, but most people, it's kind of a clip point. If you're gonna baton on there, it's just gonna cause trouble. So, and it's pretty dangerous. Like people who don't use knives a lot, they're not really into knives, and they buy a knife like this, it's got a really crazy clip point like that, they're gonna actually do some hurt. They're gonna hurt themselves. But again, if you have a clip point or a main body, like a knife that has like two edges on both sides, it makes a lot of sense to have a handle that's actually the same on both sides. And with that swell in the middle, you just get so much purchase. And again, so these were very quick to make, and it allows you to get a very high degree of polish. As many grits, you can go all the way up to 2,000 grit, because you're just there with your hands doing it. Like the machine is doing all the work, and then you just touch it off on a belt grinder, to both sides. So again, very, very simple construction. You can actually sort of see here roughly. And this is, I think, the most important part, is being able to round down your raw material into a cylinder and then drilling your tang hole perfectly down the middle. And this gives you, if you wanted to make a kitchen knife handle from this, it's very easy now because everything is perfectly centered. You even have a little, from where the thing on the other end of the lathe puts in a center hole, so you can see everything you're doing, and you can create your octagonal handles or your round handles, and you can see everything is, because you can also bore the hole all the way through, like this one, and now you have a center point in the back and you have a center point in the front. So if you were to remove material from this, you can actually eyeball it really well because everything is super duper centered. So again, just a heads up. And for example, a handle like this on a paring knife is totally fine if it's completely round. Not necessarily on a Bowie knife. You do want to flatten the sides, but again, like the level of quality that you get, enormous level of quality and polish and finish and the construction. Look how tight. This is not glued in, but you can't take it off. This is stuck on there, and these rings, and they add so much strength to the handle. Now imagine this on a little paring knife. You know, very easy to, very, very nice, very, very straightforward, and just overall. And the thing is, you can hot fit your tang in there from like a little, petty style Yanagiba, and it's great. So you get it basically from start to finish, the raw material, the raw block, all the way to a 1,200, 2,000 grit finish with the lacquering, with it, everything from start to finish on one machine that you can do when doing these kind of handles, including the fitting of rings. And you can do, these rings are done on a lathe too. You can see how concentric they are. And by being able to fit those, by being able to machine away from the front, so if this was the spinning part, you can make a perfectly flat surface here. So if you want to stack materials on top of each other, if you want to do a stacked handle with different colored woods and stuff like that, and you machine each front and back here on that lathe, it'll be a perfect fit. You don't need to go on a sandpaper and muck about with trying to make everything fit perfectly, because you can get your hole through perfectly and you can finish both sides with absolute concentricity from one another, parallel, very, very flat sides. And so there's an enormous amount of unreleased potential from the use of a lathe. I mean, see, this is the front of this. Look how perfectly fitting that is. There's no handwork done on either front of this. This is just the lathe itself. And look at that. Look at how perfect that fit is. So if you were to stack pieces on top of each other, you could very easily do it by just using the lathe and making your little bits and pieces and washers and stuff to fit on top of one another. So again, like, this is just, even here, so I touched up the front on the lathe. Very, very, very clean fit. So again, just some observation that I think will greatly improve your work, especially if you're an amateur maker, right? Somebody who wants to get, who needs to iterate very quickly. This is a great addition to your workshop. Now, metal lathes are pretty expensive, but I think it's a must-have tool if you're thinking about long-term work, because it's not just, the lathe isn't just important for making these handles and these fittings and stuff like that. You can do all sorts of shapes like this. There's all sorts of funky things that you can do on a lathe to get your work looking nice and pretty. So you can see basically this is turning, and you just machine it all the way down to this, sand it, and you're pretty much good to go. So just a really key thing that I think is important to learn. Now, some people say you shouldn't cut wood on a metal lathe, but people who make custom mini trains, those little those little train sets that go in circles, and that people who are obsessed with that, they use wood on a metal lathe all the time. So as you can see, this thing has clearly been turned. So all of it's been turned. And imagine you can just sit there all day in front of the same machine to do all of this work. And it's just spinning on that machine. And you can get a very high degree of polish all the way from stock material to finished product, if you're thinking in terms of circles. And of course, then with these kind of handles, you just brush off both sides, and this feels really good in the hand. And this is not something new. People have been doing this for a very, very, very long time. So, pretty sick blade. But yeah, you want to be careful not to make it too round, like on your fin, especially a Bowie knife. You do need to knock off the side materials so that, you know, you're hitting something and it doesn't, you know, spin, twist out of your hand. You know, because that's just not what you want out of a Bowie. But for in terms of a stabber or dagger or whatever, yeah, of course that would work perfectly. The more round it is, in some sense, because then you get a lot of purchase. But yeah, just an observation that I think is very important to consider. And if you have a metal lathe and you haven't tried this before, I strongly recommend it. If you know how to use a lathe and you have a lot of experience using a lathe and you didn't think of this before, well, now you know. And I'll be doing more of this later in the future. These were kind of like more prototype-ish. I will have them up for sale at some point, but the key thing really was to test the feasibility of this and how to improve the entire construction. I like this blade. This is really cool. I was really tempted to keep this one for myself. It's a proper chopper. It's kind of weighty, and that width there, oh, bang! So, but yeah, I hope you guys have a great one, a really good one. You can easily order these scalpels from my website, hotmetalknives.com, and they're my most sold product. They're all over the world. People love them. And then there's even these little mini strops like this. There's even a smaller model that's great for the scalpel. The big one like this, you can actually quite easily, if you hold it like that and you got a big old knife, it's almost all you need, really. So it's nice to have around your neck. You got a little burr on your knife or something. The bigger one, you can do all sorts of sized bowies with. So there it is. The importance of a lathe in your knife making workshop, and the importance of testing it out and try to be experimental with it. It'll cut down a lot of elbow grease, and it'll give you very, very nice results from start to finish, and it will simplify a lot of things for you. And then in that sense, you can actually design knives that fit very well with that handle construction. So I hope you guys have a nice one. Hope you have a nice day. I'll see you later.